All right, good morning, everybody. It is 10 o'clock. I want to thank you all for joining us for the first of our November blitzes. This is brought to you by Sarah Steadfast and Newtown Mortgage. She thought it would be a great idea to have Blair with Towne Insurance talk. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah, and thank you, Sarah.
Great. Thanks so much, Tim. And I am Sarah Steadfast with Newtown Mortgage, and I know most of you know me. I've got I take care of the loan officers who are in your offices, and we appreciate all your support. And I am going to introduce Blair James. Blair is with Towne Insurance, and we were kind of brainstorming, and I said, what kind of things are there out there that maybe we don't all know about insurance? So Blair, I'm going to turn it over to you. And here are 5 things you may not know about property insurance. Take it away, Blair.
Thanks, Sarah. Good morning. My name's Blair. I have been an insurance producer for about 12 years, and I've been with Towne for 4. And really appreciate our relationship with Berkshire Hathaway and with Newtown Mortgage and all the other Towne Mortgage offices. So I'm going to talk today 5 different things that you may or may not know about property insurance, things that could help you personally and maybe your clients as well. The first thing I'm going to talk about is claims. So of course you have insurance so that if something happens to your home, you can file a claim when you need to. What you may already know is that when you do file a claim, it's going to be on your claims history for 5 years. So that's important because it will most likely affect your home insurance premium for 5 years. So you always want to make sure that it's a claim worth filing. It's going to follow you whatever insurance company you go to and you switch to. There's been several times where I've pulled claims histories, which I do for every quote, and I've seen clients file tiny little claims. So, a $500 deductible, the $1,000 claim, they only get $500 back. And I can guarantee over the 5 years, it's going to affect your premium more than the $500. Now, one thing you may not know is that just calling your claims department actually shows up as a $0 paid out claim. So when I'm pulling claims histories, I'm seeing every time you even call the claims department. And that's important. And I'll give you an example why. I had someone recently call me for a quote because her home insurance premium had gone up quite a bit. And she had, a $30,000 water damage claim, which was obviously worth filing. But she also had a couple of $0 paid out claims. And when I'm doing these quotes, it kind of shows up as a red flag because the carriers are going to want to know, okay, so they called us, they talked about some damage. Did they actually fix it? It's not going to affect your premium, but it could get you dropped from your carrier. This is important because before you call your claims department, call your local agent. No matter who you're with, just call and get their advice before you make the call and before you have whether a claim you end up filing or a $0 paid up claim show up on your claims history. So any questions about that before I move on?
So just talk briefly about the property report. I think we used to call them a clue report or something. Just talk briefly about that.
Yep. So that's just your claims history. So like I said, anytime you actually file it or you're just calling to, make a question to your claims department, it's going to show up on your loss history. If you own multiple homes, it's going to show up. It's based on your social security number. So even if you move, it's not just based on the property. It's going to follow you with all the different properties you filed a claim at.
So if you have a history of doing these zero claim calls, zero loss calls, zero loss claims, I guess is what you call them, then and we talk about this a lot, that you can't get homeowners insurance the day of closing. It used to be like, oh, I got a closing this afternoon, let me get a homeowners insurance policy. And it doesn't work that way anymore because there are so many things that the insurance company is actually looking at. So they're basically running this report on the property that you're buying and on you.
Correct. Yep. So that's kind of a lot of the things I'm talking about today are the reason why it's nice to have a local agent. I worked for Liberty Mutual for 8 years and everything was very black and white. If they didn't want the business, I just couldn't write it and I had to send it somewhere else. It's nice to be with Towne Insurance now because I have several different carriers and lots of different options, and there's always something for someone. So it just takes a matter of me having a good relationship with these underwriters and being able to vouch for the client, explain the situation, and explain the $0 paid out claims or the giant claim that they had, which hopefully was on their previous home, so it shouldn't even matter. But it's just a matter of talking it out with these carriers.
Very good. Very good.
So the next topic I want to talk about, kind of on the same token, is about roofs. A new roof can have a huge impact on your insurance premium. So that's why we are asking about it. If I have a client who has a brand new roof, it can save them anywhere between $200–300 a year a lot of the times, which is helpful. And on the same token, an older roof can sometimes be an issue with insurability. A lot of these carriers have a limit of 20 or 25 years. Even if it's a 30-year-old architectural shingle roof, some of them don't care. It's very cut and dry. Roofs are a big deal. Obviously there's going to be more claims, more likely to have claims if it's an older roof because you probably have more leaks and things like that. So again, it's just a good reason why it's important to have a good relationship with a local agent, because we can kind of talk it out with these underwriters and explain. Another thing is that I know I had my roof cleaned and it looked like a brand new roof, and it's probably a 20-year-old roof. So when I'm going to these carriers and asking them for approval for this older roof, it's nice to have a clean roof that looks good in the pictures that I'm showing them.
Wow. And then is there a difference between the different kinds of roofs? I think about here in our area, we've got probably the tin roofs, we've got the architectural shingles, we've got the Spanish tile, that kind of thing. Is there a difference on the composition of the roof?
Yes, so metal, tin, the roofs that are, designed to last 50, 100 years, I should say, those are fine as far as being older than 25 years old. So those are typically fine. The only thing that I don't have any carriers that will do it is a flat roof. Those are pretty rare, but if you have a flat roof, I personally wouldn't even know who to place you with, but they're pretty rare, so that's not usually an issue.
Wow. All right. I already learned something.
So the next topic, and by the way, I'll make sure everyone has my email. So if you have any questions after the presentation, you can email me directly.
Right.
And ask
Sounded
me.
like somebody might have had a question.
Yes. I'm sorry. I couldn't get my mic on fast enough. This is Terry. I have a question. When you say a flat roof, you mean a rubber membrane roof? A lot of our houses have like some flat roofs over an addition or a porch. And you're saying that you can't get insurance for a house that has.
If it's over an addition and it's a small part of the house, that is possibly something I could work with. It depends on how small the area is. It is a big issue. I mean, there may be a carrier or two out there that are okay with it. But yes, it can be a big issue. If it's just completely flat and has no sort of slant to it at all.
Mm-hmm. What about the slate? You didn't mention the slate. I know you said it's something that's built to last 100 years.
Yes, slate, metal, tin, all of those. Anything, yeah. Yep.
All right, great. Thanks.
Yep. So
Okay,
the
so
next kind of
to clarify, if you've got a pitch roof, but you have an addition or something with a flat roof next to it, you probably can provide insurance for something like that.
Probably. It's a matter of talking with the carriers and see if we can get something, but it's certainly, yeah. The next thing I'll talk about is dog breeds. So, when it comes to insurance, we're not just insuring the property itself, we're giving you liability coverage. So if something happens on your property, if an accident happens, we're giving you liability coverage. Dog bites actually make up 1/3 of liability claims. So that's why every single quote I do, I have to ask if you have a dog, how many, and what breed your dog is. A lot of people aren't happy about that question when I ask. Some people get defensive, and I understand. And you can have the sweetest dog in the world, but insurance is based on facts. The actuaries come up with all this stuff. And so it's just questions we have to ask. I did a little bit of research, and in 2020, 60% of dog bite attacks were pit bulls. So that's why pit bulls and other dogs, unfortunately, are on our restricted dog breed list. I do have, one carrier who just restricts liability for dog breeds. So it's not ideal because if something does happen, you won't have any liability coverage. Someone could sue you for, a couple $100,000, and that's your responsibility if we're restricting liability. I do actually have one carrier, Safeco, actually, that doesn't ask anymore about dogs. They just sort of leave it up to us to be our own underwriters. So that's good that they're on board with not asking about that. But in general, the reason all these things are important, especially with dog breeds, is because if you have one of those breeds, it's not that you can't get insurance, but you're limiting your options with carriers. If someone who has, a brand new house, no claims, no restricted dog breed, I have 20 options for them, and I pick the most competitive one with the best coverages. But if you have one of these dog breeds, you are going to be limiting your options and most likely paying more because there's only going to be a few options for you. So it's just something to be aware of when you have these breeds. And the things we ask about them is we need to make sure there's no bite history, that they're on a leash at all times, that you have a fenced-in backyard, and things like that.
So if you weren't able to get liability coverage, is that something that you could get maybe on an umbrella policy or something like that?
That's a good question. I've had that situation come up, and no, most likely if it's something that is restricted on your home insurance policy, because you need to have underlying coverage in order to have it be something that's covered under an umbrella.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay, great. Anybody have any questions on dogs? Okay.
Two more topics. So the next thing I want to talk about is wind, hail, and hurricane deductibles. Damage from winds, is of course one of the most common home insurance claims. Winds are what knock our trees down, especially if it's wet outside. I personally try and write policies with flat $1,000 deductibles as much as I can. There are certain areas where you're just going to have a 1 or 2% wind, hail, or hurricane deductible. In places like Newport News, Virginia Beach, it's just not really something you can avoid. And by 1 or 2%, I mean it's 1 or 2% of the dwelling coverage. It doesn't mean 1 or 2% of the claim. It means 1 or 2% of your dwelling. Now, there's a lot of areas like here in Williamsburg where no one should have to have a high wind hail deductible. It shouldn't be a concern. A lot of carriers like USAA require a 2% wind hail deductible everywhere, no matter where you are. Some people have been grandfathered in, but if you're getting a new policy with them, that's the deductible you're going to have. And of course, they're not talking about it. They're just going to put it on the policy. And I have a lot of people come to me and I review their current policies and they have no idea that they have this deductible. You could have a $500,000 home and have a $10,000 deductible and not know. So when you're talking to your agent and getting a quote, I would recommend everyone goes home and looks at their current policies just to see what you have. You may be comfortable with that high of a deductible. I personally wouldn't be. I would rather pay money, a few $100s extra per year, and have a much lower deductible in case a claim happens. So it's something to look at and something to pay attention to when you're calling to get quotes or looking at your current policy.
Good.
And then the last thing I'll talk about, which aren't too common, but they are common in older homes and in more rural areas, are wood burning stoves. They are a huge hazard and cause a lot of claims. And it's just, again, one of these things that can affect your insurability. It's hard to know when you buy a house if a wood stove has been, installed properly. There are certain questions we have to ask. A lot of these carriers are okay with it, but they have to meet certain standards. They have to be a certain distance above the ground. They have to be cleaned annually and inspected. And we prefer that they were professionally installed. And as long as those things are okay, then it's fine. But it's important that your clients are making sure the insurance carrier knows about them. So if something happens, there's no question that the claim is going to be paid out. It's not something to hide. Normal fireplaces are completely fine, but wood burning stoves and coal burning stoves are in particular kind of a hazard.
That's great. Anybody have any questions on that?
So those are
Okay.
all my topics today. Hopefully you guys learned something. If you have any other questions, let me know. We're all a part of the town team, so please feel free to use me as a resource. I have, we all know we're in the sales business and not everything is turned into $1, and that's fine. And if you have questions for me, even if it's about flood insurance, you want to know if a house is in a flood zone, please use me as a resource. Please feel free to call me or email me with anything you need.
Sounds great.
Thanks,
All
Sarah.
right. If anybody has any other
We may have
questions?
we may have a couple questions. Looks like
Okay.
Tanya Barrow.
Yeah, going back to the roof insurance, the popularity of solar panels is what I'm wondering how that affects your insurance if you're getting solar panels put on your roof.
So it's a newer thing, so it's kind of something we're learning as we go. I don't have any carriers who find it to be an issue where they won't insure it. It's just a matter of me asking so that I can make sure they're covered. I know on the mortgage side, there's a lot of issues with solar panels. We don't have those issues. I just want to make sure they're properly covered, and they would be covered under the dwelling since they're attached to the dwelling.
Okay, thank you.
Joe Terrell.
Yeah, we've had a lot of questions about solar panels recently. A lot of increase in their popularity. So good question.
Can you talk about vacant homes and their insurability?
So vacant homes are tough. It kind of depends on the situation. If it's vacant, because every situation's different. To give you a flat answer, I mean, there's something for everyone. I ideally like to place them with a standard carrier, your Travelers, your Nationwide, Safeco, companies like that. If I have to, and which is usually the case with a vacant home, I will place them with a non-standard carrier. Lloyd's of London, USLI, carriers like that. It's not always the best coverage, but it's kind of the only thing we can do for vacant homes. It helps if you're trying to insure the vacant home with the carrier that you have your primary coverage with. Typically, when it's a vacant home, it's because they're selling it, they're fixing it up. It just depends on the situation. It's not something it's something I can do. It just takes some time.
I mean, our situation, like say, we have low inventory, you have a buyer that's got a window they can work with, but say the right property shows up, buyer purchases, but they know, they're still going to be 2 maybe 3 months before they actually move in. Does the window that is going to be vacant, does that affect the ability to insure, or just the fact that it's vacant makes it a problem?
So in that situation, I think what you're asking is, so it's really more on so if they own the home and it's going to be a few months before they get into it, normally 90 days is the window it's usually 60 or 90 days that these carriers are fine with it. I like to be upfront with it, with the carriers, so that if something happens and a claim happens, they're covered. I can usually get an extension if it's past the 60 days to get it up to 90. When it gets past 90, that's when it starts to become an issue.
Cool, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other questions? All right. I think there's any more questions. I appreciate Sarah, Blair, come and say.
Yep.
There, ladies, anything else you all want to add? Say goodbye.
I don't think so. Thanks so much, everybody, being on today.
I really appreciate it, and we will have this hopefully online for a little bit. I'm hesitant to put things like insurance and with rules and regulations changing, so we'll probably leave it up for a month or two and then take it back down. And if I have Blair back in months or
Yeah,
doing
hey, well, I just was thinking about that on the situation you and I were talking about, the Tim, this morning. We have an individual who thinks they've had their credit, some credit fraud. Do you have that kind of insurance or anything like that, Blair?
There's identity theft coverage, and I think there is some credit card fraud types coverage as well. I personally would recommend you try and get coverage for stuff like that through your credit card company. That way you're not filing a claim for something like that.
Okay.
But yes, there is some endorsements you can add to policies for stuff like that.
And then I know you touched briefly on umbrella policies, but I always feel like in this industry, you feel like you need to be protected all the way around. So I always like to put in a plug for umbrella policies.
Yep, they're usually pretty cheap. I mean, if you just own one home and a couple of cars, they're about $150 a year for an extra $1 million in liability coverage. So it's definitely a good thing to have. People are very sue happy these days, so it doesn't hurt to have.
Exactly. Exactly. Great points.
And Blair, probably the most important thing, I don't know, is there another slide with your contact information on it?
I didn't put one on there. Maybe if I can get, I'll see if I can share it somehow via email or something like that.
Yeah, just send it to me and I'll be more than happy to send it on to Tim, and Tim can send it out to everybody who participated.
Okay.
Super.
All right, thank you, everyone. We will see those of you that are registered back here in about 40 minutes or so. I think, is that the broom sweep one?
It's
I
the
don't know,
mine, not
Mine,
theirs.
not theirs. Mine, not theirs with Kristen and Ralston. So see you guys at 11, or have a great weekend, unless we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks,
Great.
everybody.
Thanks so much, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
All right.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.